Massive have just unveiled the Week 3 PTS patch notes, and an addendum to that was a change to the Caduceus, and it was not a small one. Stick around and we'll talk about whether or not the Caduceus is still worth using. Guys, it's Skill up here. Week 3 of the PTS is now officially out there. It's in the wild. You're able to download the client right now if you're on PC. And while there's a whole bunch of other changes that I'm going to be going through later, one of them that I wanted to talk about right now was a change to the Caduceus. Now, the background to this is that before this point, 229 named high-end weapons were not a thing, generally speaking. You know, so things like the Caduceus or the Midas or the Hungry Hog, they were fairly decent weapons. However, they only dropped at their set gear scores. Now, these named high-end weapons can actually drop at the maximum gear score of 229, meaning things like the Caduceus go straight to the top of the pile as one of the most sought-after weapons in the game, given how well it complements skill power builds. So when the developers announced this week that named weapons were going up to 229, my very first thought was, holy hell, the Caduceus is going to absolutely crush everything. I looked for a record of it in the patch notes and didn't see it there, and then a few hours later, I noticed that the patch notes had been updated to include a note that the Caduceus was actually going to be changed. The exact wording of the patch note reads, Caduceus has had its talents modified to replace the removed talent restored and better fit the new gear score scaling. It now has the following talents. Talented. Killing a target with this weapon increases your skill power by 15% for 20 seconds. This does not stack killing a new target, refreshes the new timer only. Competent. Whenever you use a skill, your weapon damage is increased by 10% for 15 seconds. And finally, determined. Killing a target reduces your skill cooldowns by 7.5%. So obviously this is a really big change to this weapon because, well, there's two things. First of all, it removes restored, which was a talent that was already getting removed anyway. If you want more information on all of the talents that are being changed or removed, be sure to check the video I put in the description below. The other change though that's far more significant was the removal of cool-headed. So let's talk about the background to that so we know exactly why it's such a big deal. Cool-headed is a talent that reduces skill cooldowns when you land a headshot. It's not a headshot kill, it's just a headshot. And it actually only appears on semi-automatic weapons. So that's things like shotguns or marksman rifles. Automatic weapons do not have cool-headed on their talent tables, simply because it's a very, very strong talent to include on an automatic weapon. The one exception to this is the Caduceus. This is the only automatic weapon in the game that has the cool-headed talent on it, which is extremely powerful because if you are running a skill power focused build and you are able to consistently land headshots in, say, PvE, you can get your skill cooldowns down to next to nothing when you are running a Caduceus and the right sort of build. So the fact that this weapon existed in the way that it did was always a really big deal for skill power focused players. The thing is though, it wasn't that big a deal in the past for two reasons. Firstly, the weapon was capped at a 182 gear score, right? So in terms of its per bullet damage, when we were talking about proper endgame content, it really was not a very sort of competitive weapon from that perspective. It was almost entirely a bit of a stat stick. It was a weapon that gave you those cooldowns, but you traded away your ability to do proper personal damage. The other thing was that it really didn't matter if your cooldowns were really short, because things like Sticky Bomb and Seeker Mine and sort of Turret, they were nowhere near as strong as they're going to be in patch 1.4. Absolutely, BFB Sticky Bomb was a big deal in the DZ, but they did tune that down recently. But regardless, you know, skills are now going to be dealing a lot more damage, in particular in PvE, given that their damage ratings now scale in a way that's going to mean you are doing a meaningful amount of damage to high level, you know, level 32, level 33 enemies. So the fact is that if you could basically use this weapon at 229 gear score with a properly stacked skill build, and you could land consistent headshots on PvE targets, and you could just keep throwing out sticky bombs and seeker mines every 2 seconds, things are probably going to get a little bit out of hand. So that was my suspicion when I heard about this nerf, but I wanted just to sort of get a bit more clarification and hear it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I actually spoke to the lead weapons designer from the division. His name's Frederick Thylander, and I asked him specifically, why was this weapon nerfed in the way that it was? Why was it changed? And he gave me a response. And I quote, "The nature of Cool-Headed was that the talent was made for semi-auto weapons. It didn't do much harm in the game when the only auto weapon it was on was not max gear score and could only be realistically used through the Alpha Bridge gear set. With the new loot system where Caduceus can be had in 229 form and our new skill balancing, our testing showed that it trivialized skill cooldown management and made for some very disruptive builds. I believe that the new Caduceus is a god roll for skill users while still preserving the sanctity of the talent and build ecosystem." So that's it. That's what Massive have to say on the topic. It's not hard to understand why they have made this change. Having used the Caduceus in the past myself, I've seen how strong it could be, given the fact that it could just reduce your skill cooldowns to almost nothing. And obviously with an entirely new skill power rating system in place and skills doing so much more damage, and this weapon rolling up to 229, it makes a lot of sense that this would be an absolute go-to must-have weapon for anyone wanting to run a skill power build. And that's really what you want to avoid, I think, when it comes to any of these changes that we've seen in patch 1.4, or the changes that are about to come. If we get to a position where one way to play is clearly the best way to play and the standout must-have, best in slot item or best in slot, skill or ability or whatever, then there's obviously a problem with that. So is this weapon still good? Well, I think let's just have a quick chat about the 3 talents that are now available on it and determine whether or not they are going to be worthwhile. So first up, Talented. Killing a target with this weapon increases your skill power by 15% for 20 seconds. It doesn't stack. Now, Talented is a very, very good talent. And just to put it in perspective, the new Tactician's Authority gear set provides you with 30% bonus skill power. However, it requires a group to stack that on because, it basically takes 150 bullets to be able to stack to max. And every 10 seconds, those stacks are completely lost. Talented, on the other hand, gives you a bonus 15% skill power pretty much all the time, so long as you land a killing blow. So if you're running solo and you're getting those killing blows consistently, then you can almost assume that you're going to have a constant 15% bonus skill power, which is a really nice bump indeed. So I think that is a perfect talent for this weapon. Absolutely love it. Competent. Whenever you use a skill, your weapon damage is increased by 10% for 15 seconds. Now, this one here, again, you're going to be having some very quick skill cooldowns when you're running with this thing and you're running a properly stacked skill power build. You're going to be using skills very frequently. Certainly every 15 seconds you're more than likely going to be using an ability. Having an extra 10% damage is a nice little boost. I mean, you're not going to be weapon damage focused with this build, but an extra 10% certainly doesn't hurt. And finally, Determined. Killing a target reduces your skill cooldowns by 7.5%. Again, that's really nice. It's almost very similar to what Caduceus did, except, before Caduceus was just about landing headshots, whereas this one you actually need to kill something. But still, 7.5% off your skill cooldowns is a big deal, especially if you're running solo and you're consistently landing killing blows. Your skill cooldowns are going to be very quick indeed. So I think it's a great set of talents, and I still think it is a great weapon. It is obviously not as strong as it was with Cool-Headed, because Cool-Headed was just super duper strong, right? No doubt about that. But is this still a very strong go-to weapon that all sort of skill power users are going to focus on getting? Absolutely. Is it a must-have? No, it's not, because this is going to help you out, but it's not like your skill power build is going to be significantly nerfed without it. So I think it's reached a really good balance of being highly desirable without being a must-have. And for that reason, I think it's a decent change. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. I know topics of nerfs and weapon changes always elicit a fair amount of feedback. And don't forget, Massive can still change this. This is still on the PTS. And if you've got thoughts on what you think should go in there, let me know and I'll try and pass that feedback on. But for now, guys, if you like this video, do drop it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe for tons and tons of Division coverage, especially as patch 1.4 goes live. Hopefully still on October. We're still crossing our fingers for that. For now, guys, thanks very much for watching. Take good care and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.